And well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar training on teaming relationships, followed by a panel discussion on teaming relationships in the form of joint venture agreements. So I am happy to have that everyone that joined today. This is a collaborative effort between the SBA Ohio District Office and the Ohio Apex Accelerator at Ohio University. You see my colleague Sharon Hopkins there. She is with Apex Accelerators. Always great to be able to partner with her. And before we got started, I heard that a number of people had to cancel because of the storms that all of us experienced yesterday, if you're in Ohio. So I know that maybe you're joining in the aftermath. You might not have power at your office or at your home. So we are all feeling that pain. I am in an area where I won't have power at home until Friday. So but somehow you were able to make the time to join us, and I appreciate it. So, this is going to be an interactive training session today, especially when we get to the panel discussion, which starts at 11. So the first, and hopefully all of you are here today because you have an interest in doing business with the federal government, and you also have an interest in partnering with other businesses. So the first part of this webinar training for today will focus on different types of teaming arrangements, and my colleague Shonda Harris will be presenting on that topic. So I will go ahead and introduce her. She's very knowledgeable. I've had the privilege of working with her for the last 12 years. And as you have questions, I will be monitoring the chat. If you can please put your questions into the chat, and I will try to ask her at, an appropriate time where she's not like mid-sentence. Ashonda, why don't you go ahead and take over from here and get us started? So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. And again, as Jill said, I am Shonda Harris. I'm a business opportunity specialist in the Ohio District Office of the SBA. I have the privilege of working with Jill. We've worked together for so long. When she said 12 years, I'm like, has it been 12 years? It doesn't seem like it, but grateful for that opportunity and even for the opportunity to always partner with our great folks at Ohio University, the Ohio Apex Accelerator at Ohio University, Sharon Hopkins and her team. We are grateful to always partner with them to bring about this series. And this series focuses on government contracting related topics, and we put it on every year, and we really do enjoy helping small businesses learn more about how they can find out about more opportunities, how they can do business with the federal government. So today's presentation is going to be, I didn't even think about, let me start sharing my screen. But today's presentation is going to focus on doing business with the federal government. So we're talking about teaming agreements and joint venture relationships, but it is primarily for the federal government and not state government, local government, or even the private sector. So I am going to expand my screen here and hang on. A lot of things at the top here. And that should be, I am going to present, I think I'm going to turn off my camera. The way my screen is set up, it is a distraction to me because it's right in the corner. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And then, as Jill said, she is going to monitor the chat. So if you do have questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. And then Jill, of course, she's able to answer, questions if she doesn't have to have me stop. Oh, and there's a call coming in. All right. So again, here we are. Here is our agenda for today. We are going to go through what is a teaming agreement. And then we are going to just kind of briefly give a couple of key examples of teaming agreements or teaming partnerships. And then we are going to go into what is a joint venture. And actually, as part of the key types of teaming agreements, one of those is a mentor protege agreement, SBA mentor protege agreement. So I am going to highlight that on a few slides. That was the topic for our webinar last week. I'm not going to go into it in detail. You can visit the recording from last week, but I am going to just bring that up because it does kind of play a part in the conversation about teaming agreements, and then it does tie into joint ventures. So we'll talk a little bit about the SBA Mentor Protege Program. Then we'll go into more specifically what is a joint venture. And then we're going to have a few slides on the joint venture requirements. We'll kind of go through kind of the regulations and kind of go over the different requirements as it relates to joint ventures. Then we're going to go and we will focus on the requirements for set aside. So you forming a joint venture to go after a contract. So we'll focus on that. What are those requirements? Then some other considerations, a few benefits, and then Q&A. All right. So what is a teaming agreement or a teaming arrangement, teaming relationship? And so if you can see here, we always have our Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, which provides the guidelines, the rules, the regulations that we kind of abide by as it relates to federal government contracting. So I have the definition here, and then I'll have another slide to just kind of have a little bit more kind of plain English. So what is a teaming arrangement? So it just basically means two or more companies. Sometimes you'll see the word entity. Um, Two or more companies, two or more entities that form a partnership or a joint venture to act as a potential prime contractor. Number two, a potential prime contractor agrees with one or more or other companies or entities to have them act as its subcontractors under a specified government contract or acquisition program. And so we'll go into a little bit more details about that. But all right. So a teaming agreement, and this is just, again, today's webinar is going to be just an overview of teaming agreements and joint ventures. We're not going to go into too much detail, but to give you enough information to form a good foundation and to give you a good understanding about how teaming agreements work, kind of how you can set them up, joint ventures as well. And then we definitely have the regulations if you want to go look for more specifics and more information. So a teaming agreement is a contract where, again, as I said, two or more companies come together and they actually pool their resources. So it could be their past performance. They come together, their labor, their personnel, and they work together to bid on a specific federal government contract or project or acquisition. And one company acts as the prime contractor, and that company, that prime contractor, is the lead on that contract or that bid, while the others serve as subcontractors. And so a teaming agreement can be, again, an agreement between two or more. I do have one of the firms that I work with that they have a joint venture, and there are three companies that have come together to form it. So sometimes you may have more than two. All right, so under the teaming agreement, the prime contractor actually takes the lead on the contract in the government relationship, while the other party, the subcontractors, they can contribute specific capabilities, resources, expertise to do a specific or defined portion of the work. All right, so here are some examples of teaming agreements. A typical teaming agreement defines each party's roles and responsibilities. Uh-oh. And for 1 second, I can't see right there. And It defines the scope of work allocated to the subcontractor. It also kind of goes over the pricing terms and compensation structure for each of the agreed parties in the agreement, and then the conditions under which the subcontract will be awarded after the contract win. So the teaming agreement actually spells out these things: who will have what role, what responsibility, what's the scope of work, the pricing, and then the conditions of the contract once it's awarded. All right, so some key types of teaming agreements or partnership agreements. Just your basic teaming agreement, which you may hear us sometimes refer to as a prime sub agreement, where we just went over. You have your prime contractor, that is the lead company, that is the lead entity in the agreement, and then you have your subcontractors. All right. And then the mentor protege program. Now, that's an official arrangement or official teaming agreement in which, and I'm specifically just referring to the SBA Mentor Protege program for this presentation. I know last week's presentation was on different types of mentor protege, well, specifically comparing the SBA mentor protege program and the Department of War. But today, as it relates to today's presentation, just referring to the SBA mentor protege program. So the mentor protege program, so when the SBA, it's an approved agreement between a larger company or mid-sized company and a small company to build federal government contracting capacity. Also, another type of teaming agreement is a joint venture. A joint venture is more specific. It is a separate, distinct business entity that's created by two or more companies to pool their resources for a specific contract or specific set of contracts. All right, so let's go into a little bit more. We'll dive a little bit more deeper into the SBA Mentor Protege program as a type of teaming agreement, and then we'll go a little bit more into the joint ventures after this. And I just wanted to highlight some things with the Mentor Protege program, because I know some of our firms, before they may enter a joint venture relationship, they may be an approved mentor protege program, or some may be looking for a mentor. And so, also just want to kind of distinguish what is the difference between a mentor protege program and then also the joint venture. All right, so the SBA Mentor Protege program is, and this is taken from 13 CFR 125.9. The Small Business Mentor Protege program is essentially designed to enhance the capabilities of the protege firm, where the required approved mentor provides some type of business development assistance to a protege, for the sole purpose, to improve the protege's ability to successfully compete for federal contracts. So essentially, it is a tool to provide the proteges with business development assistance. And that type of assistance can be in uh, the form of a few key areas. It could be technical or management assistance. And so the mentor will enter the relationship with the protege, and that agreement will spell out, the mentor will say that it will provide either technical and management assistance to their protege. It could be financial assistance. It could be also trade education, or it could be assistance with performing on prime contracts through a joint venture. So the actual agreement will spell out what the mentor is firm, and it will actually say. And so the agreement will actually spell it out. And then it also has to state, when will the mentor provide this type of assistance and how often? So maybe, for example, on a monthly basis, maybe twice a month, the mentor will provide technical and management assistance, financial, but the actual agreement spells it out, and both the mentor and the protege do have to agree to it. So the mentors are encouraged to provide this assistance, again, so that the proteges are able to further develop their capabilities, their core competencies. So eventually, It is so that the proteges may be able to stand on their own 2 feet at some point and go after contracts on their own. So the mentors in this relationship, hang on for a second, I need to. All right, the mentors, um, they do have to be a for-profit business, and they have to demonstrate that they're committed to their protege. And again, they do that by, in the agreement, spelling out the type of assistance that they're going to provide. So the proteges, in order to initially qualify as a protege firm, the protege does have to be small. And I do have um, a slide, the next slide, where I'm going to kind of talk about what does it mean to be a small business. I don't want to assume kind of that everybody knows, so I just have a couple of slides to kind of go over. How do we determine who is a small business? So you may be thinking, hey, um, how do I determine a small business? How do I qualify my firm as a small business? So it is based upon your primary NAICS code. So, as it relates to the mentor protege agreement that uh, the mentor and protege are entering into, it is going to be based on the primary NAICS code that mentor and protege relationship is going to be looking to pursue. All right, so our next slide. How do we determine what is the criteria to determine a small business? So essentially, there's something called the SBA has something called size standards for small business, and they're determined by industry. And so there's something I know a lot of you have heard of NAICS codes. You've seen those when you register in SAM. So the North American Industry Classification System, those NAICS codes determine if you are small or not, and it's based on your industry. So generally, um, either the average number of employees will determine kind of the size of your business, depends on the industry. Primarily, if you're a manufacturing related company, then the size of your business is going to be based on the number of employees. But if your company um, is a services company, then we will look at your company's annual gross receipts, and that's going to be the 5-year average. So you see at the bottom of the screen, all federal vendors have to be registered in sam.gov, the federal vendor portal. And so when you go to register in sam.gov, the system will ask you, hey, what were your gross receipts over the last 5 years? So you'll add those up and then divide it by 5, and that will determine what your gross receipts are for your company. And so the SBA does have a size standards chart that has all of the NAICS codes. And then for each of the NAICS code, if it's going to be again by your average number of employees or a number. And just to give you an example with those NAICS codes, if you are in an industry such as an IT related industry like 541, 511, 541, 512, which are services, then those NAICS codes, the cap for that industry for a company to still be determined to be small is 34 million. So sometimes people may think, oh, I'm just mom and pop small businesses are the only ones that may be small, but actually the government will look at again your 5-year average. So the cap for the IT industry is 35 million. Another industry, construction industry, you can have a NAICS code like a 237, 310, and the size standards for that particular NAICS code in the construction industry is 45 million. So companies are still small if they fall underneath that 45 million and their average gross receipts, the 5-year average falls below that 45 million. All right, so you do have to have your NAICS code in order to be small, your NAICS code. You have to be small in your NAICS code. The business type, you have to be a sole proprietor or partnership or any other legal form. Your business does have to operate in the US, and then you can't be a non-profit or not-for-profit entity. And again, you do have to register in sam.gov. All right, those are the criteria for being small. So these are the criteria that the protege does have to meet. All right, and I threw this slide in again. We're not focusing is on the mentor protege program, but just so that you get specifically if you didn't participate in last week's webinar, just so you get just a little bit of information about the mentor protege program. So again, as a type of teaming arrangement, with the mentors and proteges. Here are the qualifications for the protege and for the mentor. We're not going to stay on these, but again, that protege does have to be small. And again, it's going to be based on their NAICS codes, and they do have to find their own mentor. The SBA does not find or they do not match mentors with proteges. So that's something, is that Jill? Okay. All right. So the
No.
protege, okay. It sounds like somebody maybe have come off mute. All right. So the protege does have to find its own mentor. The SBA does not provide those. Again, as I mentioned, the protege does have to be for profit, and the protege can have two or more mentors, and then that protege can have the maximum amount of mentors that it can have in the lifetime of its business is just two. All right, the qualifications for a protege, they too have to be for profit. Um, they do have to be able to, again, as I mentioned kind of earlier, spell out or put into writing the type of assistance that they're going to provide to their protege as far as the responsibilities, the type of assistance, if it's going to be business development, if it's going to be management or related technical assistance, it does have to be spelled out in the agreement. They can't be on the federal list of, they can't be debarred or suspended. They do have to have good character. Um, and also, they cannot have more than 3 proteges at a time. All right. We're going to keep moving. All right, so the requirements for SBA to approve the mentor protege agreement. So the SBA determines that the mentor, again, as we said, provides specific type of assistance to his protege, and it's spelled out in the agreement. And essentially, we just want to make sure that the mentors are providing something substantial to the protege, and it's not just they're just saying, "Hey, we just want to have a protege," but it does have to be something substantial in those 6 key areas that I mentioned. So the protege and its mentor cannot be affiliated. So what does affiliation mean? So essentially, when one party has the power to control the other, or a third party controls or has the power to control both. So essentially, if two companies, if a protege has a mentor that is what the government calls a large company, is other than small. So if a protege has a large company, then so that that protege is not affiliated with that mentor, they do have to form a mentor protege agreement, and it does have to be approved so that there is no affiliation between the two parties. And that large company does not have the ability to have control, or they don't have the ability to maybe have perceived control over that protege. All right, I am not going to go and stay on this. But again, you can look at 13 CFR 121.103 as it relates to affiliation. But again, if you are looking to enter into a mentor protege agreement with a large mentor, then you do have to have that mentor protege agreement approved first before you can actually move on to, we'll talk about joint venture relationships here in a few minutes. So that mentor protege agreement, that mentor protege relationship is going to protect that protege from affiliation. All right. I think I skipped a. All right. So here are the benefits of the mentor protege program. So we see that the actual mentor and protege can form a joint venture. And here in the next slides, we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. And then once they form that joint venture, it allows that relationship to pursue a contract. So the mentor and protege actually form a new entity, a new business in order to go after that contract. So that joint venture can pursue set aside contracts that the protege may qualify for. So, one of the wonderful benefits, and a lot of times maybe why uh, mentors and proteges may come together to form a joint venture, is that the joint venture takes on the certification that the protege has. So, for instance, if the protege is a woman owned small business, a service disabled small business, when they form that joint venture relationship, then the joint venture takes on that certification or socioeconomic category for the joint venture. So the joint venture will become woman owned. The joint venture will become also service disabled. So again, whatever certifications that protege has, the small business has, it does translate to the joint venture. And then that allows the joint venture to be able to pursue those type of set aside contracts. It can be for 8A, service disabled, hub zone, and woman owned. All right. So now we're going to move on to specifically joint ventures. All right. So what is a joint venture? And again, just as a disclaimer, we are specifically talking about joint ventures as it relates to pursuing federal contracts, federal contracts. So a joint venture is a separate legal entity of two or more businesses that come together to bid on or perform work through their combined efforts, property, money, skill, or knowledge. So again, I am throwing in kind of the regulation 13 CFR 121-103. And all I did is just kind of break down the regulations so that we can kind of spell out just kind of what all the joint venture entails. So again, it is a legal entity between two or more entities or small or businesses intended to engage in or carry out or pursue a contract. Now, that joint venture, there is a time period on that joint venture. So when the joint venture is formed, the joint venture only has the life of 2 years. And so that 2 year period is determined um, from the start of the date of the first award. So if a joint venture, let's just say, were formed today, August 12th, then that joint venture would be good for 2 years, August 12th, 2026 to August 12th, 2028. Now, essentially, once the joint venture starts to bid on contracts, let's just say the first contract that the joint venture goes after is not until January 2027. The joint venture, even though it was formed in August 2026, it goes after its first contract in January 2027. It wins that contract in January 2027. So the actual 2 year date for that joint venture is going to start for the date of the first award for that joint venture. So it would be January 2027 to January 2029 for the 2 year window for that joint venture. So the joint venture, again, essentially can be formed. Two entities come together or two or more with their skills, with their knowledge, and a specific joint venture entity may be awarded a contract after the 2 year period. Well, I just went over that. I'm sorry. Just went over that. All right. So again, that 2 year period is going to start from the date of the first award. All right. So I believe we just went over this at some point with the joint venture. Um, I think. All right, we're going to go into just a little bit more definition of kind of what needs to be in the joint venture agreement. So the joint venture does have to be in writing. So it just can't be two companies, two or more entities that come together and they essentially say, hey, we are going to do this, we're going to do that. And they're just agreeing to it verbally. But that does have to be in writing. And again, that joint venture does have to be set up in sam.gov. And in addition to that, the joint venture, as I said, does need to be written, does need to be set up in sam.gov. That joint venture actually is its own entity. So essentially, um, I like to use a lot of analogies. So if you're looking at a mentor protege relationship, that's kind of like two or more companies, two firms are dating in a dating relationship, or they are getting engaged. And then if you look at the joint venture is like a marriage. The entities are coming together to form a new company. That new company, that new entity must have its own federal tax ID number, its own EIN from the IRS. It must have its own name. It does have to be, as I said, set up in SAM. So essentially, it is a new entity that's formed. And so when the two or more parties come together, the joint venture is small based on the status of the managing member of the joint venture. So the small business has to take on at least 51% ownership of the joint venture. And then um, we look at that joint venture party as the managing member of that joint venture. And so that joint venture managing member, they can be 51%, at least 51%. It can be a little bit more. I do have a firm that they're 70%, I believe, in their joint venture. So at least 51% ownership in the joint venture. They are considered the managing member, and then they do have to appoint an employee from their company as the project manager for the joint venture. The joint venture's profits are split that are commensurate with the work that each party performs. So, depending on the work, and I do have, I believe, in another slide, we'll kind of go over that a little bit more
Hey,
as far
Shonda, we just got our first
as,
question.
yes,
So, Ron is asking for any of these arrangements, are there any minimums on annual revenues or years in business?
any minimums as far as how much the firm can make before they can
Yes,
enter in? Okay. And then
years
how
in
many years in
business.
business? Okay, good question. No, there is not a minimum, but I will say that if a company does not have any revenue, I don't know if you want to enter into a joint venture with another firm if you don't have any revenue. Um, it's only in a sense of you forming the joint venture, you are going to have to put in money. You do have to set up a bank account. That's the next one. And so each joint venture party does have to establish money to put into the bank account for each joint venture party. Also, if you are just starting out and you are new, I'd say new to federal government, you're just starting out, I wouldn't recommend that you enter into a joint venture either. I would recommend that you want to focus on getting your business up and running, kind of learning how to focus on running your company, knowing how to manage payroll, kind of doing all that before you enter into a joint venture. The joint venture really is a tool to go after larger size contracts. And so if you don't have any established revenue, if you haven't been in business for a long period of time, it could be something that could be detrimental to your company and maybe possibly to your joint venture partner. So hopefully that helps. And again, I know Jill had mentioned that Apex Accelerator is our partner in us putting on these webinars. If you're interested in becoming, entering into a joint venture, if you're looking at, hey, I want to get a mentor, hey, I want to be a protege, you can reach out to your Apex Accelerator They are a great resource to kind of help you kind of navigate through these type of questions. And then that specific question, if you are just getting started as a company, if you are just getting started, getting customers, um, finding contracts, you may want to reach out also to the Small Business Development Center. And I would recommend that you kind of focus on getting your company up and running for a couple of years before you may want to look at entering into a joint venture. But good question. All right. So the joint venture does have to establish a separate bank account. So again, the joint venture is its own entity. So it has its own name, its own tax ID, its own EIN, a separate bank account, and both joint venture partners do have to establish or put money into that bank account on behalf of the joint venture. The joint venture also has to itemize any major equipment. Again, the joint venture is going to be set up for a specific type of contract. So the joint venture is going to spell out if it needs any major equipment, if it needs facilities or resources. And then each joint venture member will provide if they are going to, well, they'll spell out in the agreement if they need to bring any equipment, resources, facilities to the joint venture. And so the actual agreement will actually itemize or spell out what equipment, what facilities, and each joint venture parties that will actually be spelled out in the agreement. The joint venture agreement will specify the responsibilities of the members. So it will actually break down, okay, what will the managing member be doing this type of work, the source of labor, the contract performance. And so again, that will be spelled out in the actual joint venture agreement. Each member is obligated to complete the joint venture performance. So once the joint venture does win a contract, and again, however it's laid out in the joint venture as far as what member is going to be doing what, both parties are responsible to perform on the contract until the contract is complete. Um, and even if a member withdraws, because that is a part of the agreement. The joint venture establishes, uh, so there's record keeping and a reporting process for the joint venture, and the joint venture managing member will keep the records at their office. And they do have to report that information kind of to the SBA. All right, so what are some of the requirements for joint ventures as it relates to submitting or bidding on a set-aside contract? So again, this is from 13 CFR 125.8. So again, the joint venture between two or more business concerns can, as a small business, bid on federal procurements as long as the joint venture is small, according to the size standard that is assigned in the contract. So again, in the joint venture agreement, is going to spell out what contract that the joint venture is going after and the NAICS code for that project. And so the joint venture does have to be small. And again, that goes back to the managing member of the joint venture being small in that relationship. So the actual performance of the work. So for any of the contracts that are set aside or reserved for small business, again, it does have to be performed by the joint venture. And if that joint venture is made up between a protege and a mentor, then the joint venture has to be able to bid on the work based on a percentage of, the joint venture must perform the applicable percentage of work, and the small business partner to the joint venture must perform at least 40% of the work performed by the joint venture. So again, that's small business, the protege has to perform at least 40% of the work of the joint venture. And so, except as set out. So in instance for construction type projects, so that if there was a joint venture relationship and they're going after a construction, contract, then that joint venture managing member or the protege does have to perform at least 40% of that contract. All right, we are going to keep going here for the sake of time. All right, so the performance of work. So, as it relates to the joint venture going after a set aside contract, the work performed by the small business partner to the joint venture does have to be more than administrative. And so, again, in the actual joint venture agreement, that small business partner does have to provide or do more work in that relationship than just administrative or ministerial functions so that it gains substantial experience. So, again, that is going to be spelled out in the agreement. The amount of work done by the partners um, will be aggregated, and the work done by the small business protege partner must be at least 40% of the total. We just said that on the other slide. So, in determining the amount of the work done by the mentor participating in a joint venture with the small business protege, all the work done by the mentor and any of its affiliates at any subcontracting tier will be counted. So, they will count that. And in that instance, that mentor uh, can provide 60% of the work. So work performed by similarly situated entities. I'm getting tongue-tied today. So essentially, a similarly situated entity is where you have two companies that are similar in nature. So if there are two woman-owned companies that may be in a joint venture relationship, then in that instance, where they're both the joint venture parties are similarly situated, both are woman owned, then in that instance, the similarly situated entity will not count toward the requirement that a protege must perform at least 40% of the work performed by the joint venture. All right, certification of compliance. Now, prior to performing on a contract or going after a set aside contract with the joint venture, the joint venture must submit a written certification to the contracting officer or SBA, officially kind of letting them know that they are in a joint venture relationship. So they do have to submit that to the contracting officer that they do have a joint venture. Now, the parties have entered into a joint venture agreement and that it fully complies with the regulations. And then also that agreement will also state that the parties will perform the contract in compliance with the joint venture agreement and the performance of work that is laid out in the actual agreement. So essentially, that certificate that's going to a contracting officer is just saying that, hey, we formed a joint venture and we are going to perform the work that's in the contract as laid out in the contract, and we will perform the work until the contract is completed. And so they do have to submit that information to the contracting officer. All right, capabilities and past performance and experience. When evaluating the capabilities, past performance experience, business systems and certifications of an entity, submitting an offer for contract set aside or reserved for the small business as a joint venture established pursuant to this section. The procuring activity must consider work done and qualifications held individually by each partner of the joint venture, as well as any work done by the joint venture itself previously. So essentially, one of the beautiful things about joint ventures is that both joint venture parties can bring experience into that joint venture, and then the joint venture can take on the past performance of both joint venture parties. And so that can carry on to whatever contract that joint venture is pursuing. So if the joint venture is pursuing a contract and maybe the protege, a lot of times, um, if it's a mentor protege joint venture, that protege may not have any past performance experience. So the beautiful thing in them entering in a joint venture relationship with its mentor is that that joint venture can take on the past performance of that mentor. And they actually can put that past performance of that mentor on the joint venture's capability statement. So um, the procuring activity has the discretion whether or not to require. So essentially, this is, I'm not just going to read all of this, but essentially this is saying that the procuring activity or the agency, the buying agency, can require that the protege or the small business in that joint venture relationship have a level of past performance, or that joint venture partner can have that past performance. So either either one in that instance, the protege or the mentor can have that past performance experience. All right, if a procuring activity requires a protege or lead small business joint venture partner to demonstrate some successful performance and or experience on previous contracts of lower value than the required offers, generally successful performance by the protege or lead small business firm on the contracts it identifies shall be rated equivalently to successful performance by the mentor. So again, that protege can take on that mentor's past performance and they can kind of claim it as their own. The parties to the joint venture in the aggregate must demonstrate the past performance experience. So they do have to be able to prove that. And again, they can have that information enlisted on their capability statement, but they do have to have it. If the protege does not have it, then again, the mentor does have to have that past performance experience before they can perform on a contract. All right, here's some other joint venture regulations worth reviewing. And I'm not going to go into the limitations on subcontracting, but you can look those up at 13 CFR 125.6. And then also we did talk a little bit about affiliation, but affiliation based on joint venture in 13 CFR 121.103. Uh, Now I'm trying to read what this top of this slide says. I think these are the benefits. Um, Hang on for a second. All right. So, as part of the SBA's mentor protege program, a business with, again, whatever type of certification, 8A, SDVOSB, woman owned hub zone, they can form a joint venture. And then that joint venture will take on that certification of the protege or that small business. And the joint ventures would qualify for set aside contracts that the small business is eligible for. So any set aside contract that that small business is eligible for, the joint venture can go after it if it's 8A. But again, the protege company does have to have that certification. So if that protege is 8A, the protege is veteran owned, woman owned, or hub zone, again, the joint venture will take on that certification and then the joint venture can pursue those set aside contracts. So this is really important that firms cannot obtain a federal contract with just an approved SBA mentor protege agreement alone. So even though it is a form of a teaming arrangement, and you do form the SBA mentor protege relationship does have to be approved by SBA, that approved mentor protege relationship cannot pursue a contract. The mentor and the protege, they must form a separate joint venture agreement. So again, the SBA mentor protege program is set up so that the proteges can kind of gain capabilities, they can gain um, better core competencies uh, through business development assistance provided by their mentor so that they will be able to successfully compete for federal contracts on their own. So with that, essentially the mentor protege agreement is just for business development purposes for the protege, while the joint venture agreement is used to pursue or bid on contracts or bid opportunities or larger contract vehicles. And so I do want to say again, if the SBA mentor and protege, if they're in a mentor protege relationship, or they're looking to form a mentor protege relationship, and that mentor may be large or what the regulations say other than small, that SBA mentor protege agreement does have to be approved before that mentor and protege can enter into a joint venture. So the first step is going into a mentor protege agreement, getting that approved, and then once that's approved, if they desire to bid on a contract, which all the firms that I know, the majority of them do want to pursue contracts. So the next phase would be to enter into a joint venture relationship. And with that, um, the joint venture relationship as it relates to the SBA does not approve joint venture relationships. The only ones that it does approve are for 8A sole source joint ventures. So if there is an 8A firm and they're looking to go after a sole source contract, that means that that contract does not have to be um, put out for competition. It's not listed on sam.gov. So if an 8A company is going after a sole source contract, then the SBA, we do have to approve sole source joint ventures. We no longer approved 8A competitive joint ventures. And so, one of the beautiful things about joint ventures, the benefits is that the past performance of that joint venture relationship can take on the past performance of both joint venture parties. And that's really going to that's really going to be beneficial, especially if that protege does not have any past performance or has very little past performance. Then in that joint venture relationship, that protege can take on or claim the past performance of its mentor. Also, the joint venture does allow for share costs and resources, and it does allow both joint venture partners to kind of leverage their experience and their market share. That is essentially it, and I believe we have 4 minutes. Jill, are there any questions that we may have?
Well, there have been some questions that have come through that I've been working on answering, but I think there's still a good question that New had was, can the joint ventures be used for city and state contracts? And I said
Great.
that they can.
Yes. Very good.
Uh, what we're going over in this presentation is what the SBA requires for joint federal joint venture agreements, but
Correct.
joint ventures can be used like outside of federal government. And another question was, what legal protections can there be for teaming agreements to make sure that um, the prime, like if it's a prime sub relationship, that the
Mm-hmm.
prime can't use the capability statement personnel uh, of the uh, sub, and I
Mm-hmm.
recommended reaching out to legal counsel.
Yeah.
And this is something that our joint venture panelists might be able to talk more on because they
Yes.
actually have a joint venture agreements with other businesses. So those were kind of the questions that came
Thank you.
through.
And I do want to mention, I didn't have it on here, but again, yes, this presentation was geared more for federal government contracting. But as Jill said, yes, you can use joint ventures to go after state, local, private sector contracts. But I do want to stress if you are looking to enter into a joint venture relationship, that you would do it by seeking legal counsel and specifically looking for an attorney that has federal government contracting experience, that knows the rules and regulations, and has a good understanding about federal government contracting and not just using any attorney. But I definitely would recommend that you do use a government contracting attorney to set up your joint venture agreement and also a teaming agreement. Um, yeah, the SBA, we don't look at teaming agreements. We don't approve teaming arrangements, teaming agreements. But again, I would recommend, as the firms I work with, that you would seek out an attorney to actually get that legal agreement set up so that your interest and everything are protected. Yeah, because we've heard some, I know of
Because
some horror
we're not
stories.
attorneys at the SBA.
No,
We know the regulations around around joint venture agreements as they pertain to protecting SBA's interest. Like we always recommend when you're forming a teaming agreement or joint venture agreement to have legal counsel that can review and protect your interests. And I
I'll put that
also,
up.
just for the sake of making it available to people, I uploaded the SBA Mentor Protege template so you can take a look at it because
Oh,
New
good.
had asked about the business development assistance that can be provided. And I know we talked about that at the beginning of the
Hmm.
presentation. And we also have recording from last week, which was specifically on the SBA Mentor Protege program that talked
Right.
about the various types of business development assistance that uh, uh, can that a protege can request. And New is asking to see the slide that's
Th
prior to.
this slide or this one
Um,
or this one.
I guess we'll find out because I am not sure. So any federal attorneys you partner or recommend, we can send you three,
Yeah,
uh,
I
and
can
then
put
you
some
can.
in the chat when
Okay.
Jill is moderating the panel. I can put some in the chat. And I just want to, as a disclaimer, we are not endorsing these references that we are putting in the chat. I know that some of my firms have utilized some of these attorneys, but it's not an endorsement of the attorney or their services.
All right. Very good. Well, um, we are going to switch gears a little bit here. And of course, as soon as when the camera's on me, that's when everyone is starting to call. It's not like people were calling while I was not on camera. So
Do you need to take that?
no, I don't think
Okay.
so. I think it's okay for now.
Okay.
If my son calls me again, then maybe because they're in charge of the generator at my house, and
Okay.
I just don't want
Okay.
them to blow it
Let
up.
let me know and I'll step in for a minute.
Yes, yes. Okay. Well, this is the fun part. Not that the first part
It
wasn't
is.
wonderful, Shonda, but thank you. So I know that we go over really technical things sometimes, but this is a technical world when you get into important things like joint venture agreements or mentor protege. We want you to understand the regulations, but we also want you to have get a feel from people that are in businesses, I'm sorry, business owners that have experienced it, because they can impart much more wisdom than we often can. So we do have five panelists. I don't see them all on here. I see Teresa McAlloy. I see that you have joined. If you can unmute yourself and show your camera. Al Wolford with CDO Technologies. I'm sorry, Teresa is with Macalogic. Oh, there's
Hi.
Kaylee right there. Hey, Kaylee, with Protective Coatings. Barb Smith with Journey Steel. There she is. And then Arthur Tomeo with Arylic LLC. So
You
I
see
do
Al?
see, I see Al. Yes, I
Okay.
see his. Yeah, everybody's ready and excited. Okay, well, very good. And there's Arthur right there. So now I have Shonda and I we've done these panels several times and we've come up with questions. But this we want this definitely to be interactive and And really, this panel is for you, the small businesses. So as you have questions that maybe I didn't cover, if you can put them in the chat and so we can talk about it. So, and also, if this is a question that you, as panelists, may not want to go into, you can also say that. So, I would like to take time to introduce, for you all to introduce yourselves. I'll just go ahead and call each of you by name and your business name. If you can give us a little bit of information about your business, I'd appreciate it. And once we've gone through that, then I will start the questions. So, Teresa, I have you at the top. I'm going to go ahead and start with you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Teresa McElroy. I work at Macalogic. We're headquartered about 15 minutes south of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. So there's a lot of rain and thunder behind me, and I hope my power stays on. I have been in business. I've been in this business for 40 years. Good Lord. And I've had Macalogic for 14 of those 40 years. So have a lot of scars and happy to share those. I have been in both an SBA mentor-protege relationship that includes joint ventures and a DoD mentor-protege relationship. So, so I have a little experience there. I don't know who Shonda is giving you for government attorneys, but if you're in the Miami Valley at all, I can recommend Taft. I use them all the time. Taft, Stepness, Suzanne Sumner.
Suzanne.
They are going to be one of the ones.
Are they one? Okay,
Yeah.
great. They're really good. I've used them for several things. So I am going to endorse them because I'm a private company and I've used them, so I can endorse them.
We use Taft too.
Macalogic is a IT services contract. We primarily support the Department of Defense.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate it. Kaylee?
Hi, I'm Kaylee Lebo with Protective Coatings, and we are here in Dayton, Ohio, also not too far from Wright Pat. We do a lot of work out at Wright Pat on both self-performing, which means we do it ourselves, the paints and coatings, like office remodels, skiffs, anything like that. And then we will also be the general contractor and hold the prime contract and then sub it out. And of course, this meeting is about joint ventures. So that's how joint venture side of things, we do the GC work.
Thank you. All right, Barb.
Hi, I'm Barb Smith, president of Journey Steel. Journey Steel is a self-performing steel fabrication and erection company and added drone technology in 2021. We're 17 years old as of yesterday. We still feel like a startup. That's a whole other story. We're located in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Thank you. All right, and Al?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I do apologize. This rainy season has brought some allergies onto me, so bear with me. Again, Al Walford. I'm the president and CEO of CDO Technologies, and we are a systems integrator and an IT services firm located and headquartered here in Dayton. We have been in business for over 35 years. I've been around the 8A program probably for about 40 some years. Through previous companies, and we have had probably 5 or 6 small business mentor protege agreements with 8As over the years. We operate in multiple locations. We're headquartered near Wright-Patterson, but we operate in other locations around the country.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, and Arthur?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Arthur Tamayo. I'm the CEO of Arylic. I started Arylic with my business partner in 2016 when I was 26. So it's also been a while for me, relatively speaking. I know the other folks here have outpaced me in terms of good quality experience, so I can hopefully provide any good context by way of our company's experience as well. So we run a strategic communications company. We do national outreach campaigns, particularly for civilian as well as DoD, DOW agencies, and I look forward to providing any help that I can.
No, I appreciate it. Very good. And I'm so excited to have all of you on today. And Cicely sent us a pretty complex question in the chat. We're gonna, and it's essentially what happens when a teaming agreement doesn't go as planned.
I read that.
Anyone, and we'll get to that, Cicely, your question in just a little bit, or your situation, and see if any of our panelists can provide their wisdom towards it. Okay. So one of the, and as I get started in the prepared questions, just working at the SBA for the last 14 years, and then prior to that being with PTAC, one of the larger questions that I get is how do you find a joint venture partner? Because a lot of companies will come to us, especially with the mentor protege, and just want to know if we can provide a relationship building between a mentor and a protege, and that's just not something that the SBA does. So we're not a matchmaking agency. We try to set the stage so that companies can have organic conversations with each other. But just my first question is, how do you find a joint venture or a teaming partner? What considerations did you give for that? And any of you can start off with answering.
I think for us it has been through relationships. We over the years, again, we've had probably 5 small business mentor protege, 8A mentor protege agreements with firms, and I would say the majority of them have um, arrived via relationships that we have had over the years. So that I think that's where it starts for us, and I would say for the most part, most of them have been fairly successful, very successful in some cases.
Can jump in.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Kate.
I'm gonna say the same thing. Ours have been with people that we've been working around, we've known. I mean, not super, like they were people that we were comfortable with, but they weren't like, oh, we were best friends or anything like that. But people we had worked around and comfortable with and were willing to trust them to do a joint venture with.
I also had relationships, but I'm thinking that for just based on having sat through the last hour, that there might be a lot of people that are newer to the space. I would suggest that you join organizations that are consistent with your type of business. So for me, that's AFCEA. It might be Society of Logistics Engineers. It might be Women in Defense. But I would join organizations and get to know people to develop those relationships that Kaylee and Al are talking about. And then the other thing that you might want to do is if you have a GovWin subscription or something like that, a lot of times people will say that they're interested in opportunity and just start reaching out to folks, cold calling them. But I think finding a relationship and then maturing it to the point where you want to actually do a joint venture with them, because as Shonda said, it pretty much is a marriage. But any kind of teaming arrangement, you're going to have lots of communication. But for those first initial forays, it's just going to be a matter of getting yourself out there, introducing yourself to everybody around. And if you are going to join an organization, I strongly suggest that you get actively involved. We always need volunteers. I'm the chairman of FCA, so of course I'm going to push for that one, the Dayton chapter. But we always need volunteers, and that's a great way to get your name and your face out there to develop relationships.
And I was just going to jump.
Yep.
Sorry. I was just going to jump in. I will also be the panel member that Jill or Shonda will say we have technical difficulties and mute me. But because I found our joint venture partner by accident, we did make cold calls and different things like that. But really, it was through another organization. So I would say definitely listen to the ones that have been very successful in having many joint venture and teaming agreements. Ours was very difficult to find, and we sort of found it through another organization, and it was by accident after being denied trying to reach different companies to ask them to joint venture with us when we were in the federal government space. So we did find it through an outside agency where it was a different event, and that's how we found our joint venture partner, not one we were looking for.
It sounds like a lot of tenacity and grit.
Yes.
Very good. Arthur, did you want to add?
Yeah, so again, we're very still in the growth stage of figuring this out. We just formalized our JV, about a year and a half ago. Actually going on to 2 years right now. This was a big challenge for us in the way we figured out, like, you would think, of course, you would need a good company to partner with to win more work. That kind of anecdotally obviously applies. But for example, I think, Teresa, you brought up a great point. For the folks here who are just kind of jumping straight in, um, coming from an advertising, marketing, and PR perspective, a lot of people ask me, it's like, how do I build a presence? It's like, a lot of it is social media, for example, right? You can't build a present if you're not social in social media, right? You can't build a reputation. You can't build relationships without trying to form them first. And collaboration is the name of game when it comes to us founders, and business leaders, just because if you don't start a conversation with, hey, I found an opportunity, or hey, I see that you're in this space and I'm looking to also develop my capabilities here, or hey, I have an in, or hey, I've sparked this conversation. You got to bring meat to the potluck. You got to bring something to the potluck, right? I've gotten so many calls with people who found my information on GovWin, or, and they say, "Hey, Arthur, how are you doing? You want to start a conversation?" I'm just like, "About what? I can't even talk to my family. They can't even get a hold of me. So, like, why would I pick up this phone to try and talk business?" And so the way we practically found it was, we went on our, market intel, and we said, "Who's winning? Who's winning in the space that we want to be winning in?" And then reach out to them. I literally picked up the phone call and called dozens of organizations who are winning currently, organizations that have won, that haven't won, a lot. Those are great opportunities right there because they're hungry and they're looking to form better partnerships. But from the last kind of section of this presentation, those are great guidelines that, quite frankly, matter when you start actually doing work in collaboration. And so a lot of the figuring out the dating of finding a JV happens so that by the time you get lawyers involved, you have a really good sense and a collaborative nature going in versus getting lawyers involved, forming this JV or MPP agreement, only to then use that as a source to keep people honest. I always felt like that was a terrible place to start, because everything you can do in a JV, you can do in a private sum relationship. There are a variety of ways to become empowered there, even as a small business. So that's just from our perspective, kind of how we digest that question.
So I'm hearing really good wisdom from all of you on this. So I've heard professional organizations can be a great way to meet other businesses that are doing similar things. I heard that you got to be social to be social, and it's true. It's very true. So those potential relationships, they take work. And I heard Al and Kaylee talk about how sometimes the relationships are pre-existing. Sometimes it had been like a business that you knew of and decided to work together. But if you just are getting started, a professional organization can be helpful. And heard from Barb that uh, uh, the first attempts weren't necessarily successful, but you just got to keep at it and keep trying. So the short answer is it's not easy and it's not immediate. But if you find the right partner, and also I liked Arthur's point where you got to bring something to the potluck. You can't just cold call someone and say, I want to partner with you, and you don't have a project in mind, and you're putting the onus on your potential teaming partner. There's great tools out there that you can conduct market research with. And if you haven't met with your Apex Accelerator, you should do that because they can help you
Awesome.
learn about the publicly accessible tools like SAM.gov or how to research your potential research your competitors in USA spending so that you can find out where contracts are contracts and your capabilities are being performed. So that you have something to bring to a potential teaming partner outside of, hey, I'm a small business, will you partner with me? And as Arthur mentioned, as small business owners, you got 1,000 things that are going on. So just to take a cold call with a company that's not prepared can be difficult. So I have another question that we can just start tackling, and I'll just go in order so that and if you don't have anything that you wanted to comment on that, you can let me know. So what are you looking for in a joint venture partner when you're deciding to go after a project? So say you find a project. So what would you want to go find in a JV partner? Teresa, I'm going to start with you.
Well, you want somebody who complements your skill set. You also want somebody who communicates the way you communicate. So if you want to meet with them every single week and they say, once a month is fine, then they're not the right partner for you. So you really want to find somebody who works kind of the same way that you do. Also, you want somebody, and somebody had a question earlier in the comments, and it's like, I just want to jump out of my skin, whoever Cicely Henry is, because that agreement that was made and then post the agreement, they're trying to change the agreement. So you want somebody who you can feel confident is going to look you in the eye and hold to whatever agreements you make. And so, you want to start small. So as a joint venture partner, I will tell you, I want to have teamed with them before. So I want to be on a team with them either as a sub or a prime. And then I'm willing to joint venture with them, because when you're in a teaming relationship, the rules of engagement apply, right? If it's going to be 60-40 or whatever your percentage work share is, if they hold that commitment throughout the engagement that you're on, then I might joint venture with them, because when you joint venture, you're just much more tied together. And as Jill, I think, mentioned earlier, you've got a shared bank account. So you've got to agree on how you're going to manage finances, what you're going to do to pay things like, for example, if you were to incorporate in Delaware, you've got that $300 a year thing that you've got to pay there. Well, you have to agree on how you're going to do all of those things. Teaming is a little bit easier to start with because you don't have to have joint accounts and you don't have to have a separate UEI, which is the unique identifier in SAM. You don't have to have a separate cage and all that stuff. So if I'm looking for a joint venture partner, I'm probably first going to go to people that I've already teamed with.
I echo
Thank you.
what Teresa said. Honestly, like in my opinion, everything that you would ever want to do in a JV, you could probably do in a prime sub relationship. Like make
Mhm.
that work. And I mean this in like truly, unless you're going after ginormous contracts that require specific level type of, like you need to be in this agency and this optive and have this particular type of work. Like the JV really is a benefit for the larger companies to play in the socioeconomics that we're in. And
Right.
so, by and large, those socioeconomics tend to skew smaller than what they would naturally bid if you're going after and teaming with a big partner. But yeah, like underrated thing, it's expensive to have payroll. It's expensive to like think about it. You have a JV and technically two companies are subs to that JV. Who manages it, right? Who does payroll? Who does invoicing? Who does the
Right.
taxes? Who does, right? Who pays for that? If this was purely a prime sub relationship, you just do taxes and get invoice and all that fun stuff regularly. There wouldn't be this extra step of bureaucracy. And like I said, we're small businesses. Um, we don't have time for that. So like save yourself the heartache in going after that. So like echo what Teresa said. I'm sure everybody here on the panel also has similar experiences. those are the absolute cleanest business relationships. You have a teaming agreement, who's a prime, who's a sub, and just play ball there. And if you can get along well there and just really do work together, communicate well, have hard conversations, like that's the game. Like, business relationship is working when you have hard conversations about who pays for what, who covers these costs. Hey, this came up and the work share is different now. Like, when those things get messy and you're able to actually have really good conversations, I'm not saying they aren't hard, but good conversations, that's how you know that's a good relationship that you want to build on.
Very good. Thank you. Kaylee?
Can you just repeat that question again? So it was very
Absolutely.
different. So let me
Yes.
make sure I got this right.
So what qualities should small businesses look for when trying to find a suitable teaming or JV partner?
So I think on ours being in construction, I think is a little bit different than the first two. That's why I was like, let me make sure I understand this, because for us, the joint venture, it allowed us to do past performance and bonding and be able to put that stuff together. So as a construction company, like we really started with a joint venture instead of a teaming agreement. So that way we could have past performance to get on like a large contract and to be able to combine our bonding and everything like that, which we would not have been able to do and the other types of relationships. So when like we looked for our partners, it was, again, someone that we were familiar with. They had the capabilities for bonding and past performance and to strengthen us as the company, right? Because like it's us that wants to do the work and needs to do it. And that was able to help strengthen us and mentor us also at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Barb?
Yeah, I can just say ditto, all of that, and also being in construction. But what we look for is someone that aligns with us, someone who shares your mission and your vision. I have a business partner. So basically, when I look for a joint venture partner, I'm looking for another business partner, because if you don't work well together, if you don't have the integrity and the drive and the mission and the vision, it's not going to work. And to Kaylee's point, of course, being in construction, then you're also looking for someone that you're bringing a value add, but they have a value add. Is it the past performance? Is that experience? Is it their bonding capacity to bring it up? And I think Teresa alluded to it as well as Arthur, of course. Hopefully you have the opportunity to already have worked with companies in a subprime sort of relationship, so you know how they work, how it really operates before you throw it into the fire. So, but again, looking for those people that like, trust, that their mission, their vision aligns with you, because it is a marriage, and you don't I think Teresa alluded to it as well. If you want to meet and communicate and talk every week and they want to talk every quarter, that's not going to work. So really, that's what we look for, is we're bringing something to the table. They're bringing something to the table, and we're working well together with a shared mission and vision as far as what that outcome would be, so that we're not recreating the wheel, we're not bumping heads, but we're really coming together as a unit, bringing our strengths together and supporting each other.
All right, thank you.
Can I just add, I know I already talked, but I just want to add, especially for a joint venture, right? Pretty much you're gonna, I mean, unless you're doing like socioeconomic, if you're joint venturing with a larger business, and that's gonna allow them, because you're under the SBA mentor protege relationship, therefore you negate the affiliation issue. So they now get to bid into the EDWOSB or 8A or whatever it is space. You know what? Make damn skippy that you get something out of the relationship. They should be helping you with maybe standard teaming agreement templates, or with proposal support, or helping you learn something new, which is what the mentor protege program is all about anyway, right? It's supposed to be helping you become a stronger company. So don't let them just use your size and then treat you as though you're a less than. I mean, that's part of why I think the SBA's requirement for these joint ventures is that you perform a minimum of 40% of the retained work. And remember, that's 40% of the retained work. So if your joint venture subs out, 40% of the work, that only leaves 60% of the work. You need to do 40% of that 60%. So at a minimum. and it needs to be non-administrative. So make sure you're gaining the quals that you're trying to gain, and gaining the experience and knowledge that you're trying to gain. So maybe, for example, you're going to be getting a cleared facility for the first time. Make sure that they're teaching you how to be an FSO and helping you along, and not just allowing them to use your status. So that's just a little foot stomp.
Oh, very good. And Al, did you want to add to this question?
Well, I agree with Jill, everything everyone has said.
Okay.
I think what I would add for us has been commitment to achieving those areas that they need to achieve. For instance, things like having an approved accounting system. You know, a lot of companies come in, they don't have approved accounting system. Well, you got to get that. You got to put the effort together. We have mentored and nurtured companies to get approved accounting system. We understand that that is a very important piece in order to bid and to pursue certain opportunities. The other component I think that was just brought up is the facility clearance. If you're pursuing DoD contracts and you have to have facility clearance, then you have to do those things, and we have to work with that company in order to achieve that. That's a daunting task, because sometimes in that case it's a chicken and the egg. You don't have a contract, you can't get a clearance, right? You don't have a clearance, you can't get until you get a contract. So we have to be committed to working through those types of challenges, and it takes effort. It takes effort to get an approved accounting system. It takes effort to get a facility clearance. It also takes effort and commitment to uh, business development and business intelligence, data gathering, by both parties. So I think commitment for us has been a key thing, because you can't sit back and wait for it to come to you.
I'm hearing really wonderful pieces of wisdom here. And Teresa, I really like that you brought up because this happens a lot for small businesses, and this isn't one of my prepared questions, but when you are a small business and you're getting started and you're partnering with a mentor that has a lot of experience, it can be very intimidating from the small business standpoint. You want to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to make that relationship work. But also, when is the right time to step away if it ends up that that potential mentor or the potential business partner is asking too much? What type of communication can small businesses have at the beginning to help protect themselves? Well, I guess that would be a question. When is the right time to step back if it seems like it's not going to be a benefit? Does anybody want to talk about that?
How to
Or
protect yourself? Make sure it's all written down. Every darn thing needs to be written down, and make sure that everyone understands, and that you're continuing to have conversations. And I think as a small business, a lot of times people look like, oh, gee, gosh, you're helping me, and you feel like you're kind of less than. You're not. You're bringing something that they want. And so always go in with that value in mind. Obviously you're not going to be arrogant about it, right? But I would say just make sure everything's written down. One of the things that the SBA template requires that you do as a joint venturer is for every single project that you bid on. So, if you're bidding on a 30-person job or whatever it is, you have to write down who's going to manage it, who's going, what the split's going to be, who's going to provide the equipment, whether that's a laptop or a dump truck or whatever. But that all has to be defined in advance when you go to do the proposal. And so documentation is your basis for everything. And so I strongly suggest that as the small business, that you make sure that all the agreements are in writing, so that you're comfortable. And then as far as when you walk away from that, I would say as soon as somebody lies to you, actually, that's true. If they start coming after, and again, I'm going to go back to that person's thing where it was like, our agreement was 51.49 and now they're trying to change it to 66, whatever. I'd be like, yeah, first of all, I'm the prime, so that's not happening, Remember, you're that STVO
Okay.
up there, they're the prime. You,
That's a good segue into this
Yeah.
question.
yeah.
No, and I appreciate it. So, and I'll give everyone else, but yeah, thank you, Teresa. So, Cicely's situation here, and you can all look at the chat. It came in at 11:05. So, they are an SDVOSB MBE contractor. The original teaming agreement, the work share was 51/49. Now that it's nearly complete, the teaming partner is attempting to change the allocation to 66 for their company and 34 for mine. So, when you see a teaming agreement go bad or the relationship starting to go bad and one company is trying to intimidate the other, like uh, when you're faced with something like that, like what recommendations would you have for this company?
No.
No,
Same.
Like I look, and I don't say that lightly, right?
no.
Small businesses have a hard time, and I'm saying this for me, right? And take to heart kind of my experience when it comes to this. Sometimes when you're starting up something big and you have big aspirations, we don't know how to respect our positioning. And positioning is extraordinary. And what the whole panel has been talking about strategic positioning for your company. That talks about protecting yourselves, being able to gauge business relationship. That's all matters of positioning. That's something that Apex Accelerate, all those guys, they're not going to show you how to do, but it's so invaluable just because businesses need to know that no is a complete sentence, right? That's it. There's a whole level of consent and when it comes to business negotiations, just because just like with every relation, this is just a relationship. I could go back to my sub, to my mentor company and saying, hey, you know what? As the prime, I'm going to give you only 5% work share instead of your 49. I could say that out loud. Anyone can say anything. Just like anyone can sue you for anything they ever dreamed of. Will they? No, it's ridiculous. At the end of the day, like if you're in a relationship where that is being put upon you, one, that's a red flag. Immediately, that's a red flag. I wouldn't ever imagine a situation where anyone that we worked with, JV or otherwise, goes to us and saying, oh, and by the way, you as the prime, you're gonna get less work share, one, than you should be doing. I don't know the nature of this contract, Cicely, but if that's under any kind of socioeconomic, like that's also, you have to perform a majority of that contract first and foremost. Otherwise, it's your company that's going to get into trouble for it, if you don't do that. But also, things like this do happen. No JV agreement is perfect. And so there are situations where, hey, there's some ODC costs. There's some, hey, as a prime, because we're managing a lot of stuff, there might be just some other costs where we go to our partner, and again, partner, not even just a JV, and saying, hey guys, we incurred some cost. Like that benefited the team that had to be done. We're just trying to accrue it. So maybe next month we'll do 60% of the work, y'all do 9% less. Can we make that happen? Obviously, everything is a negotiation when it comes to business, and it has to be treated as such. But there are certain hard boundaries that need to be established, to Teresa's point, at the very beginning. If somebody tries to steamroll you, that in and of itself is a huge red flag.
And Cicely, Henry, I just tagged you in my comment and I gave you the FAR clause that covers limitations on subcontracting. So I believe that they're trying to change the SDVOSB percentage to be less than what the law requires. And again, I'm familiar with services because I do services. Construction is different, product is different. So you just need to go read the FAR clause. And the bottom line is, to Arthur's point, you just say no. You're the prime, you're not changing the deal. Your subcontract should have that in there. As a matter of fact, you can change it to drop them to a lower percentage if you want to. Now, I don't suggest that you do that, but I'm just saying you control it because you have privity of contract as the prime contractor with the government.
Al, I see you nodding.
I
And you've
agree
been
with
in so
everyone.
many of
I
these
mean, the
types of,
answer is no.
yes.
I think what's important here is for companies really to understand the compliance. Compliance is something that it'll make or break you.
Yep.
If you go outside the compliance rules, you're gonna impact your entire business potentially. So I think it's very important to know that when you have those type of situations, you want to keep your business in good compliance with the government. And if you go outside of that compliance regulation, then what's going to happen is you're going to pay up, there are penalties that you could pay. So I think you don't want to put your business at risk. That type of action, if you say yes, could put your business at risk.
Right.
So I would strongly encourage you to consider making sure that you stay in compliance with the FAR and with the rules, because they could strategically impact your business for a lifetime.
And it's Al, and Barb, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to jump in and say this just goes to what we were talking about for how do you pick your JV partner? How do you pick your partner? You need to vet them first, because this is obviously a lessons learned, unfortunately, Cicely. But the answer is no. But know your rights, know who you have your back, and both Shonda and Jill will help you fight this if you let them know what's going on, because they help to vet, and you do have the power to say no, and you do have the backing of the SBA, so utilize that as well. But when you're picking your partner, when you're picking, these are the things that you need to line up. And there may have been some red flags or stop signs that maybe you went through, unfortunately, but thank goodness you're at the point now where you can say no, and you have the backing of the federal government, the SBA, to back that. And then this is a lessons learned. But utilize your SBA handlers, I like to call them, ahead of time before you enter into a teaming agreement or a joint venture agreement, because they know what to look for as well. And they can help you with that. And, they may not be able to pick your partner, but they definitely can help you, flag some of the things that are going to be a no-no and not in your best interest.
And what I hear all of you saying is you're in the driver's seat. And you need to be in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be tempting when you have a teaming partner that has more experience than you to they may think that they're in the driver's seat. But when it's a socioeconomic or a small business set aside that they may not have been able to qualify for without your participation, just remember you're in the driver's seat. And all 5 of them resoundingly just said, just tell them no. Tell them no, and here's why, and here's the regulations. Shonda and I, the regulations, we fall back on them every day in our job. Every day. Just say, here's what the regulations say on this or that, and here's why you can't do this because of that. So,
And Jill, can I add that with that, not only are you in the driver's seat, but if your joint venture partner, especially if it's a large firm, they have a lot of past performance, they've been in the game a long time, they may say, hey, our attorney is going to handle the agreement, they're going to spell everything. You are in control. I always recommend to my firms that you want to choose the government contracting attorney that's going to draw up the agreement, because they're going to have your best interests at heart. Not to say that the other ones won't, but a lot of these larger firms already have, attorneys that are on retainment. They've been utilizing them for a long period of time, but they're going to protect their interests. So you always want to make sure that you find a government contracting attorney that's going to protect you. And if that firm is saying, no, we have to use ours, that may be another red flag
red flag.
that you want to say, well, you know what? Maybe we're not going to enter into this relationship. So always remember that you want to choose the attorney, not to have your partner to use theirs.
And yeah, go ahead, Kaylee.
I was just going to add to you can dissolve or decide to go separate ways and it not be negative, or also too, it cannot be something wasn't working out. For us, our JV partner was like, hey, this isn't, we're not really seeing a lot from this, and we can choose to separate and it not be amicable or anyone fighting about it. It can, so don't be scared that oh my gosh, I'm gonna get in these situations, and if it's not working out, we're all going to be disagreeing, but your agreement will also say like, okay, if there is a split, here's how it's split. And then everything goes back to, like for us, it went back to us as being the 51% owner. And it can happen very, very peacefully and just like work out that way also.
Well, that's good to know too.
Yeah,
It doesn't
Jill,
always have to end
I
in
would also
bloodshed.
add, don't put your business at risk.
Yeah.
Amen.
Don't put your
Yes.
business at risk.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important because
Mm.
longevity is very important. And I would not put my business at risk for going outside the boundaries. I would also say take the high road. And sometimes taking the high road isn't always popular.
But always take that.
Very good. Well, and I think this leads also well to the next question. What are best practices on maintaining a positive business relationship with your JV teaming partner? What are some tips on what to do and what not to do? And Teresa, did you want to start on that?
Oh, talk to them a lot. Make sure that you're meeting. For me, it's weekly, and you need to be meeting at multiple levels. And I strongly encourage you, if you have a joint venture, I strongly encourage owner or CEO or president, whatever your senior title. I strongly encourage one-to-one meetings with that, whoever those people are, about once a month. And then for the rest of the staff, so business development, especially, but if you're going to go after stuff, it doesn't hurt to have your accounting and HR people at least know each other. But business development needs to be meeting at least weekly to talk about joint pursuits and captures. Executives need to be meeting about once a month. And then the rest of the staff can meet, once a month or so. But I would, communication, I mean, it's just like a marriage at home, right? You don't talk to your spouse, not going to work out so well after a bit of time. Your joint venture, you guys need to, and the thing is, every now and then the meeting is, hey, how you doing? Good. We just came back from Disney. Awesome. It's still humans dealing with humans. So keep those relationships going. If you don't have a business reason to talk this week, that's okay. Make it a very short meeting, give them back their time, but make sure that you're always top of mind with your partners.
Yeah, and much to Teresa's point, right? I'm gonna piggyback as I've done kind of all meetings with what Teresa and the rest of the folks have been saying. Again, I go back, bring something to the potluck, right? Like whether it's, hey, like something happened, like every week, especially like Q1, like once October hits and all these solicitations, all these CEOs are all burnt out and they're all going on mini vacations, nothing really happens. Not really, depending on, at least for my industry. But like that doesn't mean that you just break away from the discipline, from the continuation, from the consistency of that relation. You need to water that relationship, whether it's through meetings and everything like that. But yeah, if you're a CEO, if you're an owner, I'm sure everyone else here is, if you're meeting with a director, especially from a bigger company, I mean, look at like the turnover rates in our in government contracting, just in general. Like you'll probably know that person for maybe 2 to 3 years, and then they're going to be replaced, and then you have to start a whole new relationship all over again. So I would absolutely make that connection as high up as possible. The bigger the company, the harder it is to get to the upper rungs. But then again, it's like, do you really want to partner with a Deloitte, who has not the best history of building small businesses up? No, find a company that you can aspire to be in like that 5 to 10 years, build from there, try to work that relationship, because their goals are also different from a business brand perspective than yours is. There might be, hey, how do we acquire the next 10 big contract vehicles? Yours is just, let me get that first, major win in my industry. Like it's difficult, but by having those regular check-ins and bringing things to the table, even if it's saying, hey guys, we're not in HHS yet and we really want to kick the door down. Here's how we're looking to do that. And here's how we are thinking of doing it together. That shows your partner that there's a drive there, there's a tenacity. As small businesses, if you lose that, you're dead in the water. We started our company with nothing. We had no past performance. We had nothing. I barely knew anything about the 8A program, right? But the level of tenacity has to carry through. And I think we still have that now. And that's really what's attractive to a lot of the more medium-sized companies, the folks that have been around. Because when I'm seeing companies reach out to me, the ones who are like, hey, let's chat, have an opportunity, I know about you, we might not have past performance, I'll reach out to them and just, talk shop. So it's all very long, obviously, but put yourself in the right position to be able to grow those relationships, and consistency matters more than anything else.
Thank you. Kaylee?
Communication. The same thing. It's the biggest part. The two JVs that we were successful in, like one, the communication was every Friday. And again, it may not even have been like we didn't have a job going on that week or something going on that week that we really need to discuss, but we still kept them Friday morning and it just kind of said, hi, kind of the same thing. What are you doing this weekend or something like that? And just got off after a few minutes. But that really helps make it more successful, and communication and just open and honest with each other. That's the biggest part of it.
Barb?
Yeah, just what everyone just said, communication, 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 staying open and honest, staying on the same page. Don't assume anything, communicate.
And now?
Transparency.
Yeah.
Transparency is so important. And ensuring that you understand what you're bringing to the table and what the protege is bringing, what the mentor is bringing, because you're bringing something. You're bringing access. Although someone else may have capability or past performance, you're bringing access. Transparency and understanding, what to expect from that mentor and what they expect from you. So I would say, again, transparency, and echo everything that everyone else has said.
And I think thank you. I appreciate it. I think we have time for a couple more questions. And if any of you attending today have questions, please put them in the chat. I'd love to hear some of the questions that you have as well. Have any of you experienced a major setback with your joint venture agreement or your teaming agreement? What steps did you take to navigate it? What lessons did you learn? I think we touched on it a little bit with Cicely, but just if any of you had a setback that you overcame, and then what recommendations would you have for companies that might experience that? Teresa, do you want to go first?
I've really had it's awful. I mean, you lose, right? I think one of the biggest issues that I faced is where my joint venture partner and I disagreed on the proposal. And for a proposal, there's two basic parts, right? There's the technical response and there's the price response. I mean, they all boil down to the same thing. And so early on, what we established with my joint venture partner, because I've got two joint ventures under the SBA program, we established at the beginning that I was, and it was a joke, but it fundamentally gave the right idea. I was the queen of the proposals and he was the king of pricing. So when we disagreed, when our teams disagreed, I made the tiebreaker call on anything technical. And he made the tiebreaker call on anything pricing. Because part of our mentor-protege relationship was I was asking for him to assist me in learning how to competitively price. So that made sense, right? And my background is a lot of proposal stuff. So it made sense that I was going to be the compliance person. So I would say that helped us over the course of our relationship not have those issues where you're fighting, because you don't always agree on the approach, right? So I would try to look at those things. I hope that helps.
Good. Thank you. Arthur?
I mean, ditto. I think there's nothing else for me to add on that point. I mean, knowing your lane and knowing why you're actually going for the JV relation, or any, again, JV is just a means to the end of being able to win more contracts, right? And I think that singular focus should tie any relationship together, because yes, it's good to check in on real people and all this and that, and goodness gracious, like starting and running your own business is a lonely affair. Like, so let's not undermine the impact on that as an individual, especially with every hat you're wearing, right? Chat GPT is your friend. It's the new wiki, right? To be able to get you like 60% of the way there. But by being able to be having some level of, now I'd say vulnerability in a sense, like you're showing weakness, but being able to go to any business relationship and saying, hey guys, we don't have any qualms when it comes to this agency. We see that you guys don't either. However, how do we solve this Rubik's Cube? Everything in business is a Rubik's Cube. You just got to figure out, like, is it, do you have enough resources? Do you have enough time to be able to crack that nut? And so if you keep grinding your axe on things that mutually benefit, I think that's the North Star that makes every other thing fall into place. It safeguards people from doing things that are out of the team's best interest, such as throwing just red herrings out there and asking for more work share than was previously agreed on. Because at the end of the day, like, our goal isn't the next contract that we win together. Our goal is to win 10 of these, right? Like, any challenge that we might have in this first contract can't be the same one we have in the next one or the next one or the next one. So if you're already having problems in that first contract that are so deal breaking, that I think is part of the journey. It's learning quick and learning often, because you don't want to have this problem when you have a 10 million, 20 million, $30 million contract, and all of a sudden you're trying to divorce court that as amicably as possible. It's expensive, and like, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing like winning all this work and then having to pay all these people to help arbitrate it. So as long as you're grinding your axe towards something that mutually everyone is trending in the right direction, I found that that just sets the business relationship on such better footing to be able to navigate those obscure kind of, like, those obscure problems that tend to happen in context of finding, winning, and managing a project. So I think that in and of itself is something that we have had a hard time doing, truth be told, but reinforcing that in subtle ways through those relationships, and reinforcing that, hey guys, we're trying to kick the door down on 10 projects. Like, we might win the next one or the next one. It's like, until we win the 10th one, I don't consider this a success. And I always repeat that with all of our partners. So it keeps people focused.
Very good. Thank you. Again, have you experienced any setbacks? How did you navigate through it? Lessons learned, Al, Barb, Kaylee?
Okay, yeah, so I can say, so I think earlier I said we had 2 JVs, but we really had 4 altogether. So the first 2 we put together, and we were going to go after a specific project, and that project didn't happen. So we have had 2 that were made, put together, not successful at all. So that, that was a pretty major setback, but it was okay. We moved forward and still tried with other 2. The next JV we won projects on, and it did well, but our partner was pretty silent. So that's when we learned with our last and fourth one was, again, the communication part. So we learned from that third one, like, what we wanted, and the fourth partner, and making sure that we did the weekly communication, and that made like the biggest difference in how successful and just how well that one went together.
Very good. So wisdom over time,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
with each relationship, figured
yeah,
out what had worked and just took the best of that and went to the next one.
yeah. And that last one was what went really well.
Great.
I can
Barb?
share our major setback was forming our first JV in 2019. And so there was that little thing called COVID that hit. So my advice would be, don't start your first JV before a major
A pandemic.
yeah, before a major pandemic. That was the lessons learned there. So that was a hindrance.
If only we could just see in the future. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Al, any parting advice here?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I would call it a setback, but I think just managing, we manage challenges on an ongoing basis. I want to say manage challenges and manage
That's a good way of
egos.
putting it. Yeah, yeah,
You're
challenges.
constantly managing challenges, expectations, egos, and I don't know if we have had setbacks other than the fact a lot of our partners have outgrown us. So, I think that's a good thing. We've had several companies and relationships where the companies have been very successful. We also have had relationships with proteges that, the business owners who were part of the company, they decided that they didn't get along anymore and they decided that they wanted to part company. I mean, they wanted to dissolve the business. So I guess you could consider that a setback, but in that particular case, we decided to find another protege. So, you know, again, managing expectations, managing egos is something that you're going to have. Those are no, I call them normal course of business.
So I'm hearing a lot from the five of you. So resilience, and understanding business relationships, and knowing that just being able to address the challenges as they come, but be resilient and work through them. I just through communication. I like Kaylee's point. You had a silent partner. That happens. I've heard of multiple companies where they've formed relationships and their partner is not involved at all. So it's just working through those, being resilient, and forming, ending it if you need to, and still being willing to partner in the future. Well, I don't see any questions coming through the chat. We've had, does anyone have any questions for our panelists? We try to stay true to time on these, and I know all five of you are very busy. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. And hopefully, I know that I learned a lot. I love hearing from you guys. So, uh, uh, I don't see any other questions. We will have additional trainings at the beginning of the new fiscal year. Shonda, do you have any parting words?
No, I was
Something
gonna
like
see if the panelists did, but just stay tuned as far as our trainings, like you said, for the next fiscal year. You can access the link to the recording for this. I'll put it in the chat on the Ohio University Apex Accelerators website. And then just go back also and listen to the recording for last week on mentor protege programs. And I think
I have one
that's
parting
it.
comment. I should have said it earlier. If you're looking for partners for some specific deal, I often contact by email or phone the Apex Accelerator. And I
There
say,
you go.
I need somebody with this kind of experience in this kind of agency. Sometimes they're able to help me, sometimes they're not. They'll give me 2 or 3 names and then I make phone calls. So I would strongly suggest you reach out to your Apex Accelerator if you're looking for certain types of partners.
There you go.
Any other parting words from the panelists?
Yeah, guys, people find folks you would love to get phone calls from. But like, by and large, if somebody keeps calling me, even though they might bring good work and they're just not vibing, just, whenever I see someone, it's like, oh my gosh, it's Arthur calling, and they like roll their eyes. It's like, I don't know. It's just not a good footing. But hopefully you guys find partners that you can be excited and energize you. I think that's a great sure sign that, other than the checklist, that everyone went over.
Keep rising.
Yep.
That resilience, absolutely.
Yeah. Also, guys, let's sociable. Like, this shouldn't be the end of the conversation. Like, add us on LinkedIn. Like I said, just keep the conversations going. Don't let it dry up. And Jill and Shonda, thanks for having us. They're great
Thank you.
resources. I call Jill almost every week just with random things out the woodwork, and Jill knows that. So I apologize. I bug you all the time, Jill.
You don't bug me. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
No, I need to call you more then. That's fine.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, guys.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Good or bad, you find me in all kinds of situations, and you're always really willing to work with me. So I
Because our
appreciate
local
it.
SBA office is better than all the other ones, and our Apex Accelerator absolutely outpaces the others.
Absolutely.
Just it's personal opinion.
Well, you don't know this about Arthur, but he's in DC. Like we've had
Oh, I'm so sorry, Arthur.
I am
several
too.
8A firms. Yeah.
They kicked
I'm
me
sorry,
out and they didn't
Arthur.
even tell me. They kicked me out, and
Yeah.
then Jill calls me. It's like, I got you, and I was just like, really?
Yeah, we rock here in the Miami Valley.
We
in
do.
Ohio,
We
so,
do.
you know, that's just me. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
See ya.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody have
you.
a great day.
Have a
Bye.
great day.